أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. Assalamu alaikum once again to Spiritual Solitude, a guide through the book In the Early Hours, written by Khurrad Murad and edited by Dr. Riza Muhammad. This has been brought to you by Faith Inspire, an organization seeking to empower all of us so that we can contribute to society, inshallah. So we are at this journey. We're on to the sixth station of our journey of the seven that is mentioned in this book, In the Early Hours. So those of you who may have missed it before, this is the book In the Early Hours, which is reflections on spiritual and self-development. So we are now not only in our journey through the book In the Early Hours, we've started a new journey, the month of Ramadan, and how time has passed so quickly. I just realized yesterday 5 days had gone and today is the sixth day. For some of you, it might be the fifth day if you started on Saturday. But these things go really, really quickly. The days that we may have been waiting for the month of Ramadan to really get the sense of spiritual attachment, spiritual development that we are seeking for, it goes really, really quickly. And so it's so important that we make use of the time that is available to do the practices that will help us in both our spiritual well-being and our general well-being altogether, inshallah. One of the things that's come up in the last few days is a question about what kind of resources do I use? Because there is so much out there, especially those of us who are in lockdown or in social isolation, wherever we are. There is an issue of the choices. Sometimes when we are provided with a number of choices that are given to us, it makes it very difficult to make those choices. Who do I listen to? Do I listen to Numan Ali Khan and his Surah Yusuf, or do I listen to Yasir Qadi and his 30 lessons from the Quran? Do I watch this event with Imam Suhaib Webb, who's doing a series of live broadcasts? Do I listen to this? Do I listen to that? Do I watch this? Do I read this? Do I read that book? And so on. It's a constant number of choices that are provided to us. Now, the great thing is, whilst it may feel a bit frustrating that we can't do all of these things, that it's a real good place to be in, that we're able to get these choices. Ramadan Live online, you can see Faith Inspire has a number of things that are happening on a daily basis. It's great to be in a position where we can make those choices. One thing that I would only say, whatever choices you make, whatever you feel will give you the best for this month of Ramadan, is whatever choices you make, stick to that. Try and not go from one to the other. If you are regularly listening to the Faith Inspire moments of Ramadan each day, which is about a minute or two, through the YouTube or Facebook or any other social media, try and make sure that you listen to each one every day, because everyone is giving a package. It's not just sort of take one and take here and there. It's a package. Try and take the whole package. Inshallah, you'll feel the benefit at the end of Ramadan. The same thing with if you are going to listen to someone like Yasir Qadi or watch him with his broadcast, or Suhaib Webb or Numan Ali Khan, whoever it is, that, or a book that you're reading, try to finish reading the book or try to stick to that book rather than moving from one to the other. So that's the first thing I want to mention about navigating our way around the kind of choices that are available to us. The other thing is, we are now into the sixth chapter of the book, and this is the penultimate chapter, so we only have one more session left. Those of you who have been able to join us throughout this series, Jazakallah khair, and well done to all of you again for being able to stay in the journey. Remember, whatever we start the journey, we must end the journey and hopefully, inshallah, begin again a new journey. So it's so important that you try and keep up with it. And those of you who have maybe joined us later, try and go back to the previous episodes. And Faith Inspire have been very kind enough to upload all the videos from the previous ones as we go along so that you can keep up, inshallah. So today, the key focus today is, if you think about our journey so far, we've focused on the process of self-development, the process of spiritual development, and this prerequisites, which is our first chapter. The second chapter covers the dhikrullah, which is the key point that Ustadh Khurrad Murad makes, which is أَلَا بِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ تَطْمَئِنُّ الْقُلُوبِ. Is it not by the remembrance of God that hearts find tranquility and contentment and sakina and itmi'nan, which is can be translated as contentment or tranquility. Then we talked about how to become a Hanif. It's kind of moving forward from the mere dhikr of Allah to really becoming a committed servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and removing any obstacles that might come in our way, such as pride and pessimism and uncontrollable anger and so on. And then we talked about how it's so important in our spiritual solitude, in our search for that spiritual solitude and spiritual contentment, that we are in touch and have a good relationship with the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and remembering the key aspects of his sunnah that will help us to remain more connected. Then we talked about the fact that we can't do this simply by connection to Allah and his messenger, but that we have to think about others around us. And this meant giving in the way of Allah, giving charity and making ourselves available to give for others. Now, if you think about now moving on, what Ustadh Khurrad Murad goes on to is what he calls relating to Allah's creation. And here he talks about how we must make sure that we keep those around us. This is the key message of Islam. Islam does not subscribe to any kind of a situation where a person's spirituality is only through isolation. It's really about being in isolation, but being with people as well. So you have a time for this and a time for that. This is why the month of Ramadan is, we have opportunities, for example, inshallah, when the mosques begin to open again, we have opportunity to do i'tikaf, which is a real kind of sense of isolation from everything around us. But Ramadan itself is also isolating, but it's also being with others. So this balancing is what we have to aspire for in our desire for greater sense of spiritual connection and spirituality, inshallah. Because kunu rabbaniyin, that we have to be rabbani, which is to do with being godly in our characteristics. And being that means that we have to be following the Quran and the guidance that is there. Because if you remember, the key goal of Ramadan is taqwa, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, and the muttaqeen are those yunfiqu, they give in the way of Allah. So this is where we want to go, inshallah. So today we begin with a story from, which is what I'm calling it a trilogy, really. So we're in episode 6. Today's one is a trilogy, and I will give you part one at a time. This hadith is very revealing, and it has so many lessons. This story itself, this hadith mentioned itself, is something that we can, subhanAllah, get so many lessons from. So let's read this hadith. The Prophet ﷺ said, and this is a sahih, this is an authentic narration, 3 men from among those who were before you set out together. It began to rain until they reached a cave at night and entered it. A big rock rolled down the mountain and closed the mouth of the cave. They said to each other, "Nothing will save you from this rock but to call upon Allah by mentioning the most righteous of your deeds." Now, this is really interesting because you don't think of that. You just simply think about calling. But they obviously learned that one of the ways to get help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is to seek for Allah's help by remembering the righteous deeds, the good deeds that we have done. So one of them said, "Oh Allah, I had old parents and I never provided my family or workers with milk before them. One day by chance I was delayed and I came late at night. I milked the sheep and took the milk to them, but I found them sleeping. I dislike to provide my family or workers with the milk before them. I waited for them, and the bowl of milk was in my hand whilst my children were crying from hunger at my feet. And I kept on waiting for them to get up until the day dawned. Then they got up and drank the milk. Oh Allah, if I did that for your sake only, please relieve us from our critical situation caused by this rock. So the rock shifted a little, but they could not get out. Now, the shifting of the rock itself is related to a deed that this person did, which is to look after and to take care of his parents. And this really sums up one of the key lessons that we will get today, inshallah. So bear with us in this trilogy. This is part one. There will be 3 parts, and perhaps we will learn a lesson from each one. So obviously the first lesson that we learn from this one is teaching us about our connection, our relationship with our parents. Now this is the bedrock of this discussion, which is the idea of responsibility. Each of you is a shepherd, the Prophet says, and each of you is responsible for his flock. Every single one of them. The hadith is quite long and it goes into what kind of responsibilities we have. But this is the foundation of our understanding in terms of our relationship with others and our responsibility as human beings. That every single one of us, whatever it is, we don't have to be prime ministers and presidents and amirs and sultans and kings and queens. Every single one of us, if you take the responsibility of your deen seriously, then you have to think of yourself as a responsible person. Just as a shepherd takes care of the herds, the sheep, and his farm, each of you is responsible for his flock. So important that we take it in this light in order for us to really truly benefit from what is to come. And this is where the Quran and the Islam talks about huququl ibad wa huququllah. So there are something that are known as huquq or haqq. Haqq is the singular of the word huquq, which means rights. That each one of us have certain rights, and the rights are divided into 2. There are certain rights that God has over us, and there are certain rights people have over us. The rights of God and the rights of people. Rights of God is that he is worshipped, that we talked about, that he is remembered, that we find ways of connecting to God, all the things that we've spoken about. But the other aspect to the rights that people have over us, that we have responsibility over, that we are shepherds of, is other people around us. And there are different groups of people that are around us. Who are they? Let's have a look at this ayah here. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah number 36, verse 4, وَاعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ وَلَا تُشْرِكُوا بِهِ شَيْئًا وبالوالدين إحسانا وذي القربى واليتامى والمساكين والجار ذي القربى والجار الجنب والصاحب بالجنب وابن السبيل وما ملكت أيمانكم إن الله لا يحب من كان مختالا فخورا. وَاعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ وَلَا تُشْرِكُوا بِهِ شَيْئًا. Worship Allah and associate nothing with him. And to parents, وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا, and to parents and to the do good, and to the relatives and the orphans and the needy, and the neighbor further away, the companion at your side, the traveler, and those whom your right hands possess. Indeed, Allah does not like those who are self-deluding and boastful. So here, notice this. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, worship Allah and don't associate. And to your parents, do good. And here, the doing of the good extended to your relatives, the orphans, the needy. This is really our communities. This is consisting of all our communities. Family is at the center. Our parents and our family is at the center. After Allah and His Rasul, our family is at the center, and everybody else, our communities, as employees and employers, our neighbors, all of these people come after. And this is so important that we are doing ihsan on them, that we're able to do good. If you really want to truly achieve ihsan, you have to do ihsan to others. And so here is the center is our family. And then we have our communities, which consists of people of our own faith, people of no faith, or people of other faiths. So you have community that consists of all of these. This is why the Medinan community, the exemplary Medinan community, consists of it was a truly multi-faith society. You have your neighbors. you have employers and employees. And of course, one thing that we mustn't forget when we're thinking about relating to Allah's creation is our environment, animals as well that are around us as well. So it's really important that when we are in our spiritual solitude, that our connection to God should not be a way for us to get away from all of these aspects of our society. And this is what the Islamic message is. This is why we are empowered by our faith to contribute to society, people who have something to give back to society. And this should be the constant message that we learn from our spiritual understanding. So the first thing, again, is coming back to dua, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala teaches us that we should be seeking for the best in our spouses and our children and our families, so that we can lead over them. ربنا هب لنا من أزواجنا وذرياتنا قرة أعين وجعلنا للمتقين إماما. Our Lord, grant us the delight of our eyes in our spouses and children, and make us leaders of the pious. Surah Al-Furqan, very famous Surah Al-Furqan, verse number 74. That you're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make that family, family that really brings you the delight of your eyes. So it's really, really important that we understand this message in this way. So coming back here, we have to ask ourselves some key questions here, which is, what is our relationship like with our own family? What is our relationship like with our neighbors, our community, our employers and employees, and the animals, the environment? What is our relationship like? How do we improve our relationship so that these things get better? So going back again, coming back to the key message that we are providing here from family is, think about things that you can do together as a family. And here, Ustadh Khurrad Murad is suggesting you do 3 things that are essential to really build your family, which is doing salah together. First of all, he talks about performing some of your daily salah collectively with your family. The Prophet ﷺ said, when you have finished your fard prayer in the masjid, you should offer the rest of your prayer at home, for Allah will bless your home because of your prayer. So here, we're in a situation perhaps that we are not able to go to the masjid, and so therefore we're praying together. Try to pray as many of those prayers together as a whole family, as opposed to each person praying in their own room, in their private space. Of course, there could be moments where you're also praying by yourself, and these times are important as well. The other one is really important. We miss this out. Perhaps we do a lot of the first one, but he talks about establishing an usra, or family circle, to study the Quran with your family. The Quran alludes to reading of the Quran in families and in homes in the following verse, where Quran says, and remember in that which is recited in your houses of the revelations of God and the wisdom. So you should aim, he even says, not only once a week, he said you should have twice a week if possible. It could be the case that you go through something together in a more deeper way once a week, where you have longer time to study together, to come together and to learn together. And this will really build the family together. The other one, perhaps we take for granted, especially in modern times now, people have meals sometimes separately. People have meals in the living room while one of them is watching TV, somebody else is on something else and doing something else together, but you are not having meals together. Many of us have been taken for granted what we were perhaps provided in the days when such technology was very little available. That a lot of manners, a lot of discussion, a lot of bonding took place by having meals together. So it's really important that we try and find ways of eating together, of drinking together, of talking to each other during the meals, and finding ways of building our family together. Now, so one thing that's really important, especially in modern life now, is the work-life balance. You got your family and relationships, you got health and relaxation, you got work and career, hobbies and interests, vacation and travel. All of these things, and of course, for us, right at the center, would be our spiritual well-being. How are we making sure that we're balancing these things out? Because this is a constant issue for all of us, especially in modern age, living in perhaps cities in particular, where we have jobs that take up a lot of our time, and perhaps our outside involvement takes up a lot of our time. So that work-life balance is so important. And here, I want you to just think of these three questions. How would you rate yourself in these statements? If you give yourself 1 being very low and 3 being really good, what would you say? The time I spend at work or in studying does not prevent me from having good communication with my family. Do you think that's the case with yourself, with you? Time I spend at work or in studying does not prevent me from having good communication with my family. Is that the case with you? What about the second question? My family means more to me than worldly possessions and accomplishments. Is that the case? How do you know that is the case, that your family means more to you than worldly possessions and accomplishments? Sometimes we find ourselves where we're constantly searching for these worldly possessions and accomplishments, and it's far too late to go and give that time to a child who has grown and probably doesn't want to give you the kind of attention that you now are able to give. You know, trying to find ways of making sure that what you say here, that my family means more to me than worldly possessions and accomplishments, are truly meant in the daily time and quality time that we're able to give. I try to share in my family members' interests. How are you doing that? What kind of things do you do so that you are sharing? So I deliberately, when I was trying to highlight the key words on each one, it's interesting, when I was looking at it after, the 3 words that I highlighted was time, means, share. And that's perhaps sums up the key thing, that if your time doesn't mean that you're sharing, then you are not fulfilling this work-life balance. You're not really taking care of the key goal that you have of looking after the interests of your family. So, of course, family without children, perhaps you don't have children, you have other members of the family who have children, and so on. But one of the key thing about children is that Prophet ﷺ says, one who does not show mercy without children is not from my community. In other words, that love, that affection, that time, that sharing that you can give to your children. Those of you who don't have children, you might have nephews and nieces and cousins and so on. It's really, really important to find ways of giving that time and showing that mercy, because they are our future and they are looking at all of us to be able to provide them the kind of guidance that will help them to contribute to society and to be better spiritual beings, better believers, better Muslims who are really taking care of themselves and of those others with them. So the obligations to our children are many. And you know, the Prophet ﷺ says in one hadith, no father can give a better gift to his children than providing them with a good education. Within the family, both mother and the father have important roles to play in the growth and development of their children. And here I appeal to particularly fathers, especially in our communities. They are sometimes not visible. And having spoken to different people, one of the things that many fathers are feeling like, especially being locked down literally to the family, to the home, is that they're learning things about their children that they didn't know about. And the mother is thinking, well, yeah, I've seen that many times. You know, you're just talking about it now. And that perhaps this lockdown is becoming a bit of a blessing for fathers who are perhaps getting that opportunity that they didn't take before. And so therefore, it's really important that we see that this is not just a mother's role, but it's if you have children, it's both parents who have equal responsibility to take care of them and to nurture them, to support their growth and development. Of course, the key members who I've already spoken about in the first part of our story, but here, make it a practice as part of your spiritual development to not only have that relationship with your parents, but a constant practice. You know, every dua that you make sure to include this dua, which is Rabbi rahamhuma kama rabbayani saghira. رَبِّ ارْحَمْهُمَا كَمَا رَبَّيَانِ صَغِيرًا. My Lord, had mercy on them as they had brought me up when I was small. It's really interesting here. Rabb, the educator, which means educator, it means the Lord. You're calling the Rabb for mercy on your parents, and then you say, Kama Rabbayani. It's because Rabba means to educate, to nurture, to train. And so therefore you're calling the greatest trainer, the educator, saying that, you know, those parents who have educated me, who have nurtured me when I was small, please have mercy on them. It's a real beautiful dua when you dig deep into each of the words, the choice of words here. It could have simply said, you know, as the translation to is, which is that whoever's brought me up. But here, Rabbayani is much more than brought me up, much more than simply somebody who just fed me. But it's all of the things that the parents have provided us. And don't forget your parents, especially those of us who have parents. Trying to take care of them, looking out for their welfare. But those of us who don't have parents, there are a number of things that you can do. One is obviously make dua. You can give charity in their name. You can do things in their name, which then benefits them even in the hereafter. And this is part of our belief. Community, neighbors, taking care of others around us. There are so many things that we have. The strongest link of faith is to love someone in order to gain the pleasure of Allah, and to hate someone for the sake of Allah is the hadith that is mentioned. So what kind of things again can we do with our fellow believers and our communities? One of the things that we can do is sincere advice. Sincere advice. You should give nasiha, or sincere advice and counsel, and you should also wish your brother well. One of the hadith says, ad-deenun nasiha. Deen itself, the religion itself, is nasiha. And so therefore, giving nasiha to those around us and being a sincere advisor is so important. Self-sacrifice. You should give preference to your brother's welfare over your personal needs. Doing justice in your dealing with them. Now, doing that which is best is what justice is. Doing whatever, you know, ihsan demands that you do even more good to your brother. Having mercy and forgiveness is what we've spoken about. But the other thing is about being, you know, reliance and appreciation. Your brother or your sister must be able to count on you in times of need. You know, subhanAllah, sometimes we get so busy with our lives and with our work and even with our family and our habits and our hobbies and activities that we do. Sometimes we don't know, or we don't take care of that brother or that sister who may be going through difficulties. So you should share in the pain of his adversity and the pleasure of his prosperity, is what Ustadh Khurrad Murad talks about. Now we come to the part 2 of our trilogy. If you remember, in our part 1, where we left off, one man, he recalled the time that he was being kind to his parents. He recalled the time he was being kind to his parents. The second man said, "Oh Allah, I had a cousin who was the dearest of all people to me, and I wanted to have relations with her, but she refused. Later, she had a hard time in a famine year, and she came to me, and I gave her 120 dinars on the condition that she would not resist my desire, and she agreed." So obviously he was blackmailing her. He was using a way to get close to her. But when I was about to fulfill my desire, she said, "Fear Allah, ittaqillah, and do not engage in this except by marriage." So I walked away from her whilst she was the dearest of all the people to me. And I also left the gold I had given her. "Oh Allah, if I did that for your sake only, please relieve us from the present calamity." So the rock shifted a little more, but still they could not get out from there. So here, another important thing is about, in our relationship with others, and not taking advantage of their situation, and making sure that the relationships are based on modesty, based on ethics, on real. His ethical standing came in the way of actually doing something that was terribly wrong, in a situation where he could have gone further away from Allah, he became closer through it. And so he's recording that. Now we've been talking about community. What causes divisions in the communities? And what can we do? If you just think about what kind of things causes divisions in the communities, and what can we do? Now, one of the first thing that causes divisions in the communities is very often lack of understanding of each other. And I'm going to just mention a couple. One is not knowing about each other. It could be not only interfaith dialogue, so we don't know about other people of other faiths, of other communities, but also intrafaith, which is within our own selves. Sometimes we don't take our own fellow communities very seriously. We disagree with them on one small matter, and we try and not continue to have good relations with them, and to not see that there are so much more that we have in common with each other. So this would be one of the things, that this lack of understanding, lack of knowledge of each other. So that could be one way to deal with this as well. The other thing is that we sometimes prefer to just stay within our own circle that we are comfortable with, so we don't want to try out. There's the fear of the unknown, what it might be like. And so therefore, as part of our spiritual and self-development, Khurrad Murad is talking about really developing that side and try to find, okay, I'm very good with those around me. How do I develop my relations with others and befriending and being close to others, maintaining that relationship and trying to find ways of getting close to others. And it could be through yourself as an individual, with your own neighbors and your own communities, but it could also be through with an organization, where you are part of an organization and you are a project when you are working well with others. So just think about what kind of thing causes the divisions, and these divisions are very often artificial. These divisions are often based on fear and lack of knowledge, and we have to find ways, especially living in a multi-faith, multicultural society, and also multiracial and multi-madahib, multi-schools within our own communities and so on. We've got to find ways of coming together. And what we are finding through the social isolation, the lockdown in the COVID-19 pandemic, is that a lot more people are talking to each other. A lot more people are trying to find ways of connecting with each other. And that's a really good thing. And hopefully a crisis like this gives us the opportunity to find ways of coming together, inshallah. Now, the other aspect Khurrad Murad talks about is our relationship with our employers and employees. As an employer, he says, you have an obligation to care for your staff, provide the most suitable working environment, ensure that they are fully compensated punctually for all their services. As the hadith says, give the worker his wages before his sweat dries. As an employee, however, perhaps most of us are probably in the second category, that we are employees. As an employee, we must perform our job with due diligence and proficiency. As the hadith says, verily Allah loves that when any of you does a job, he should perfect it. You know, we should not be those kind of workers, employees who simply turn up for a job. You know, we should really try to find ways of seeing our jobs as a way of really contributing to society, to contributing to others, and not just I will get paid at the end of the month. So when I'm going there, actually, there are very many researchers that are out there that have said is those people who make jobs into something that is like a calling, something that they really find a way of not just seeing as a way of getting something back through monetary means, but something for which they give, that it helps their well-being and their happiness and their job satisfaction is greater as a result. So there's a lot to be gained by seeing our jobs in the way that Islam directs us. Know that the best food is that which comes from your own efforts. As the hadith in Bukhari says, no one eats better food than what he earns by the labor of his own hands. So it's really, really important that we keep that in mind. Needless to say, our animals and the environment Animals have rights, for Allah's creatures comprise his family. Sahal ibn Amr narrated that once the Messenger of Allah passed by a camel who was so emaciated that his belly seemed to have disappeared. He said, "Fear Allah regarding the animals who cannot speak. Ride on them while they are healthy and eat of them when they are healthy." So we know about the famous hadith of a woman who was punished and thrown into hellfire on account of her cat. She kept it tied up till it died of hunger. She neither gave that something to eat, nor drunk, nor let it go so that it could eat things on earth. Or the man who tried to help a dog to drink. So these are our environment. It's needless to say, in 2020, we are in an existential crisis as far as the environment is concerned. We are killing our own planet. And it's really sad to see that people who call themselves Khalifa of Allah, of vicegerents of Allah, don't really care enough for the environment, even wasting. And especially in the month of Ramadan, I hope that this is something that we can take much more seriously and really train ourselves so that we take care of our environment. And taking care of our environment itself is another topic. And it's really important. There are lots of resources out there on how we can be more merciful and taking care of our environment, both from an Islamic perspective. And of course, there's a lot of resources out there for that generally, that we should really be champions of animal rights, champions of the ecology crisis, and trying to take care of our environment. And this is what Islamic spirituality is about. It's that holistic approach to our being and our environment and those around us, inshallah. So part 3 of our trilogy, which will bring us to the end. If you remember, in the second one, the man was recalling about how he kept away from something that was evil that he was going to do, to one where Prophet ﷺ added, then the third man said, "Oh Allah, I employed a few laborers and I paid them their wages with the exception of one man who did not take his wage and went away. I invested his wages and much property came from that investment. Then after some time he came and said to me, 'Oh, so-and-so, pay me my wages.' I said to him, 'All the camels, cows, sheep and workers are yours.' He said, 'Oh, so-and-so, you don't mock me.' Obviously the man said, 'Well, hang on a moment, I just want my wages. Why are you giving me the entire factory?' I said, 'I'm not mocking you.' So he took all the herd and drove them away and left nothing. So what happened was, obviously what he did was he invested those wages, and he didn't keep those wages for himself. He kept those wages and the profits from these wages for the man, so that he could have those. So that's why now he's calling to Allah, 'Oh Allah, if I did that for your sake only, please relieve us from this suffering.' So that rock shifted completely and they got out walking. And this is mentioned in Bukhari and Muslim. So each of those deeds are related to what we have been covering this session, which is really about our relationship with others and how we deal with others. And it's really important that we take care of not only ourselves, but those around us. Inshallah, now we're coming towards the end of our session this evening, which is to really, what I would like you to do is not only for now, but review your Ramadan goals. How is the first 6 days, 1/5 of Ramadan or less of Ramadan has now gone? Do you need to review your goals and create more achievable goals or more challenging one? Perhaps you found so far the goals that you had, they're quite achievable, they're not really challenging enough. Perhaps you need to make it more challenging. Or perhaps you found that actually it's been really too many goals to achieve, far too many things to do. Perhaps review and wind down a little bit and then think about what you're going to do in the other 4/5 that we have left, inshallah, the other 24 or 23 days that we have left. So try and spend a bit of time, that 5 minutes that we spoke about, or reflection, reviewing your Ramadan goals and where you are so far. Now I want to leave with our usual exercises, maybe plant a tree or look after one or contribute to an animal welfare project. That could be one thing that you could do as part of your homework as a lead up to what we've been learning. So this is about environment, this is about animals. When was the last time we actually gave charity not only to a crisis where there is a famine or there is flood or there is a war, but actually an animal welfare project, a project that looks after animals? When was the last time we've done that? When was the last time we even received a message like this on our WhatsApps and Facebook status and so on? Because yes, it's important that we care about the human beings all around the world, but it's also important that we come back to the fact that those animals, the environment, that's what's sustaining us. You know, each of those animals, each of those, it's the tree, they're sustaining our very existence. So it's so important that we take care of that. So try and do something in this month of Ramadan, if not every day, once at least in the month of Ramadan, getting our consciousness of the animals and the environment around us. The second one is do an activity to support a community project. Maybe volunteer for the NHS health service. Or your own health service wherever you are. Help the distribution of the food for the needy. There is a lot of people who are doing that. You can volunteer for that. Support financially an organization or project which helps your community in any way. You know, sometimes if we can't do any of these, physically take part in these, at least financially you can say, or you can send a message to them and say to them, thank you very much for the online activities Faith Inspire you are providing. Thanks very much for doing these food distribution. Although I personally can't take part in this, I really appreciate what you're doing. It could be simple as that, or simply using our bank account to transfer some money to these needy organizations and projects who are very often doing voluntarily out of their own, but they do need some support. So helping with that. So don't forget, hope, share it with others. Next week we will be the final one in this series. I hope you can join in, invite others, inshallah. Don't forget to make dua. Please make dua for me and my family and all those around us, especially at this critical time in our life on earth, you could argue, as we are facing this COVID-19 pandemic, that we're able to come through it together and through it better, inshallah. Wa akhir da'wana and alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.